Imagine this for a moment. You are not running, you are not screaming, you are already too late. Because somewhere behind you, in the shadow of prehistoric forests, something is coming. Something built not just to kill, but to perfect the act of killing. And the terrifying truth is this: nature did it first. When Jurassic World burst onto screens, audiences were introduced to a new kind of monster. Not a dinosaur pulled cleanly from the fossil record, but a manufactured nightmare, the Indominus Rex. A proprietary hybrid stitched together from multiple species, engineered to be smarter, stronger, and more ruthless than anything that had ever lived. And then came Fallen Kingdom, and with it something even more unsettling: the Indoraptor. Smaller, leaner, faster, a creature that felt less like an animal and more like a slasher film villain wearing dinosaur skin. Long arms, unnervingly human in proportion. Claws curved like surgical instruments, a sickle-shaped talon borrowed from raptors, and a predatory intelligence that bordered on sadistic. It was a horror movie made flesh. What made the Indoraptor so disturbing wasn't just its size or its speed, it was the combination. A large-bodied predator with agility more typical of much smaller hunters. Limbs that could grab, slash, and manipulate. A silhouette that looked wrong, uncanny, as if evolution itself had made a mistake. And the franchise leaned into that discomfort, openly asking the question: what if you took the Indominus Rex and fused it with a real velociraptor? The implication was clear. This was something unnatural, something science had forced into existence. But here is where the story takes a darker turn, because we don't actually need to ask that question. Nature already answered it. Not in a lab, not with genetic engineering, but deep in the Mesozoic era, around 150 million years ago, when the Earth itself was hotter, wetter, and far more dangerous than anything we know today. This was a world long before humans, before grasslands, before birds ruled the skies the way they do now. The continents were still drifting apart, climates were unstable, and ecosystems were dominated by reptiles that had been refining the art of predation for tens of millions of years. It was here, during the long reign of dinosaurs, that a group of theropods emerged that would make the Indoraptor look like a pale imitation. They were called the Megaraptors. At first glance, they seem almost fictional. A lineage of predators whose anatomy reads like something designed by a horror writer rather than shaped by evolution. Like the Indoraptor, they are wrapped in mystery, known from fragmentary remains scattered across continents. And even today, paleontologists still argue about where they belong on the dinosaur family tree. What they were is still debated, but what they could do is chillingly clear. These animals followed the same nightmarish blueprint. Long bodies built for speed, lightened skeletons, massive forelimbs that look grotesquely oversized for a theropod, and at the end of those arms, claws so large and sharp that for decades, scientists didn't even know what they were looking at. The story begins in Argentina near the end of the 20th century. Fossils were unearthed belonging to a new predator, one that would become the namesake of the entire group, Megaraptor. When paleontologists first examined the remains, one feature stood out above all else: a gigantic curved claw. It was so large, so reminiscent of the iconic sickle talon of raptors, that researchers initially assumed it belonged to the foot, a supersized velociraptor perhaps, a giant hyper-lethal cousin. They were wrong. Further study revealed something far more unsettling. This claw did not come from the foot at all. It was a hand claw attached to the first finger, a thumb blade. And it measured roughly 30 centimeters or 12 inches in length, about as long as the largest combat knives used by humans today, longer than any claw ever documented on a predatory animal. And this wasn't a one-off anomaly, this was a defining trait. That realization rewrote everything.
It meant Megaraptor did not kill the way most large theropods did. It wasn't just a mouth with legs relying on bone-crushing jaws like Tyrannosaurus rex. Instead, it was something far rarer among dinosaurs, a predator that led with its arms. In the decades that followed, more discoveries poured in, from South America, from Australia, from Asia. Each new fossil added another piece to the puzzle and made the picture even worse. Today, at least 11 different genera of megaraptorans are known, and in several cases, their claws were even larger, even more refined than the original Megaraptor.
What researchers began to realize was that these animals weren't just armed with one oversized blade. They had two. The second finger also bore an enlarged, recurved claw, nearly as long and just as sharp as the first. And while the third finger lacked a massive hook, it was still strong, still bladed, still capable of tearing flesh. To make matters worse, what we see in fossilized bone is not the full story. Like modern birds and reptiles, these claws were almost certainly sheathed in keratin. That means in life, they could have been up to 30% longer, thicker, sharper, more lethal. At that point, calling them claws almost feels inadequate. These were built-in weapons, twin swords mounted on muscular, flexible arms. And unlike many theropods with reduced forelimbs, Megaraptorans had arms that mattered. Thickly muscled, structurally reinforced, capable of a wide range of motion that allowed them to slash, stab, hook, and hold. This wasn't accidental. Evolution had spent tens of millions of years refining this design. The result was a predator that could deliver catastrophic wounds without even opening its mouth. And the mouth? That came later. By now, it's already obvious why being hunted by a Megaraptoran would have been a nightmare. But this is only the surface, because the real horror doesn't come from how they killed, it comes from how they fed. And to understand that, we have to talk about what it meant to be prey in the age of the Megaraptors. To truly grasp how devastating Megaraptorans were, you have to stop thinking like a modern observer and start thinking like prey in the Mesozoic. Survival back then wasn't about avoiding a single bite. It was about enduring a sustained assault from an animal designed to dismantle you piece by piece. Because Megaraptorans didn't rely on one method of killing. They adapted their violence to the size of their victim, and that adaptability is what made them so horrifyingly effective. For large prey, animals that could fight back or simply refuse to go down easily, the strategy was brutal but efficient. Massive herbivores, hadrosaurs, ornithopods, even armored ankylosaurs would have been targeted with repeated slashing attacks. The claws weren't just sharp, they were curved and reinforced to rip through muscle and sinew. A Megaraptoran could rush in, strike, withdraw, and strike again, each blow opening deep, bleeding wounds. The goal wasn't immediate death, it was shock, blood loss, structural failure. Once the prey collapsed, the predator would move in to finish the job, carving the body into manageable pieces. That alone would place Megaraptorans among the most dangerous predators of their time. But this was the merciful scenario. For smaller animals, creatures roughly human-sized or below, the process became far more intimate and far more disturbing. Evidence from their skeletal anatomy suggests that Megaraptorans didn't always kill first. Instead, they grabbed. Their shoulders were unusually flexible, more so than in most large theropods. This allowed them to lift prey upward, pulling it toward their chest and mouth. With their massive thumb claws and secondary hooks, they could impale victims outright, skewering them through the torso. And then they ate. Not after the struggle ended, but during it. Paleontologists hesitate to describe behavior in emotional terms, but the implications are difficult to ignore. Smaller prey may have been consumed alive, pinned helplessly by claws that acted like meat hooks. The analogy often used is disturbingly mundane, like a human eating a slice of pizza, except the pizza is screaming, impaled, and very much aware of what is happening. This wasn't sloppy feeding, it was controlled, deliberate. The anatomy supports it. Those hypermobile shoulders weren't just for striking, they were for positioning prey precisely where the predator wanted it. And once the claws had done their work, the mouth came into play. Interestingly, Megaraptorans didn't all share the same dental design. Unlike many theropod groups where teeth remain relatively consistent, this family experimented, and the results are almost as unsettling as their claws. Megaraptor itself possessed front teeth similar to those of early tyrannosauroids, chisel-shaped with a D-shaped cross-section. These teeth were excellent for gripping and tearing chunks of flesh. Meanwhile, Merisraptor took a different approach entirely. Its front teeth resembled fangs, long, narrow, and ideal for puncturing. Other members of the family blurred the lines even further. Australovenator and Orcaraptor had teeth more reminiscent of Compsognathids and Dromaeosaurs, with smooth front edges and serrated backs designed to slice efficiently through meat. Then there was Fukuriraptor, whose laterally compressed blade-like teeth closely resembled those of Carcharodontosaurids, dinosaurs infamous for their shark-like dentition. This diversity tells us something important. Megaraptorans were not specialists locked into a single feeding strategy. They were adaptable killers, capable of exploiting a wide range of prey types and ecological niches.
And despite their fearsome appearance, studies suggest that their bite force wasn't particularly high compared to other large theropods. But that hardly mattered. Their teeth were optimized for cutting, not crushing. And when paired with arms that could already inflict fatal damage, the mouth didn't need to do all the work. In this regard, nature once again outdid fiction. The Indoraptor, for all its cinematic menace, had relatively small teeth. They were designed more for gripping than tearing. Effective, yes, but not exceptional. Megaraptorans, on the other hand, combined specialized dentition with unparalleled forelimb weaponry. If we're comparing sheer killing efficiency, the real animals take the prize. Size only deepens the nightmare. One of the closest real-world equivalents to the Indoraptor is Aerosteon, an Argentinian megaraptoran that measured roughly 7.5 meters, about 25 feet long, and weighed around 1.1 tons. That puts it nearly on par with Dr. Wu's fictional creation. And yet, Aerosteon is considered only medium-sized for the group. Nearly half of all known megaraptorans exceeded that size. Orcaraptor, Megaraptor, and Trotayenia all stretched beyond 8 meters. In their respective ecosystems, they were often the largest predators present, and in Australia, a megaraptoran holds the title of the continent's largest known theropod, a fitting distinction for a land already infamous for dangerous wildlife. But the crown belongs elsewhere. To encounter the true giant of the family, you'd have to travel back to late Cretaceous Argentina, to a landscape of river systems, floodplains, and dense vegetation. And if you were extraordinarily unlucky, you would meet Mipe. Yes, the name sounds almost harmless, but it is anything but. Mipe macrothorax was the largest megaraptoran ever discovered, and one of the largest theropods of its time. Fragmentary remains suggest a length of up to 10 meters, 33 feet. That's longer than the biggest confirmed specimens of Allosaurus. In its environment, Mipe was likely the undisputed apex predator. Its potential prey list reads like a catalog of Cretaceous heavyweights: ankylosaurs, hadrosaurs, ornithopods, and possibly even titanosaurs like Nullotitan. If it did hunt such massive animals, it would have relied on its claws to anchor itself to living mountains of flesh, ripping and holding while its jaws delivered additional damage. No hand claws from Mipe have yet been recovered, but based on its relatives, researchers estimate they could have reached at least 37.5 centimeters, 15 inches in bone alone, longer still in life. The largest claws ever wielded by a terrestrial predator. And the name? It comes from Ionican mythology. Mipe refers to a shadowy entity associated with death itself, a being that kills with cold wind. Suddenly, the name doesn't seem so funny anymore. To stand in a forest clearing and see a megaraptoran emerge would have been terrifying enough. But what truly seals their status as one of the worst predators imaginable is what happened next. They didn't lumber, they ran.
and far faster than something that large had any right to. The moment a megaraptoran lifted its foot to run, instinct would have betrayed you. Your brain, conditioned by modern animals, would tell you that something that big must be slow, that weight means momentum, not speed, that distance might save you. It wouldn't, because megaraptorans were built on a paradox. They looked like heavyweights, but they moved like sprinters. And the secret lay hidden inside their bones. Many dinosaurs possessed hollow or pneumatized bones, air-filled spaces that reduced weight without sacrificing strength. Birds inherited this feature, which is one reason flight is even possible today. But in megaraptorans, pneumatization was taken to an extreme almost unheard of among large theropods. In fact, only one other group rivals them in this regard, the neovenatorans. In megaraptorans, nearly the entire skeleton was invaded by air sacs. The vertebrae, the ribs, the ilium of the pelvis, all extensively hollowed. The result was an animal that was astonishingly light for its size. Megaraptor itself weighed roughly 1 ton, while an Allosaurus of similar length may have been 50% heavier. Some members pushed this even further. Australovenator, despite stretching over 6 meters, more than 20 feet, may have weighed as little as 310 kilograms, or around 680 pounds. That's the mass of a modern horse spread across a predator 3 times as long. This radical weight reduction transformed them. It meant faster acceleration, quicker turns, less energy spent moving. Paleontologists have even compared some megaraptorans to cheetahs, the fastest land animals alive today, not in appearance, but in ecological role. They were pursuit predators in a world where most large carnivores relied on ambush or brute force. Their leg bones reinforce this idea: slender, elongated, structurally similar to those seen in coelurosaurs, a group known for speed and agility. Everything about their lower body suggests sustained running. Everything about their upper body suggests lethal close combat. It was a perfect storm.
Picture it, a predator that can close distance rapidly, strike with oversized claws, and then maneuver those weapons with precision while keeping its own body light and responsive. A prehistoric ninja, armed not with shurikens, but with twin scimitars grown from its own hands. And this agility didn't just make them effective hunters of herbivores, it made them dangerous to each other. Fossil evidence tells us that megaraptorans were aggressive, even among their own kind. One particularly telling specimen comes from Raptor, another Argentinian genus. Its skull shows severe infection within the brain case. The damage appears to have originated from 2 puncture wounds on the side of the head. The spacing of those punctures matches the teeth of Raptor itself. In other words, this animal was likely bitten by a rival. The infection became so severe that researchers estimate there is more than a 50% chance it died as a result. This wasn't a minor scuffle, it was a near-fatal or fatal encounter. That kind of intraspecific violence speaks volumes. It suggests territoriality, competition, possibly even dominance hierarchies. Whatever the case, these were not passive predators sharing space politely. They fought for resources, for mates, and for control. And fight they did. That aggression, combined with their speed and adaptability, allowed megaraptorans to spread farther than almost any other large theropod group. Fossils have been found across 3 continents: South America, Australia, and Asia. Argentina, Australia, Thailand, and Japan all appear to have been strongholds at different points in time. This wide distribution is remarkable when you consider the geography of the Cretaceous. These animals weren't crossing oceans, they were moving across land bridges, through Antarctica, across island chains, following prey as continents drifted. They were explorers as much as predators. If you wanted to avoid them, there was one rule above all others: stay away from water. Megaraptorans favored wet environments, river systems, floodplains, coastal regions. These areas teemed with life. Herbivores gathered to drink. Smaller animals hunted and foraged along the banks. It was the perfect hunting ground. Some researchers have even speculated that certain members of the group may have opportunistically preyed on semi-aquatic animals, crocodilians, large turtles, massive fish. Early on, there was even a hypothesis that megaraptorans were primarily aquatic hunters, using their claws to spear fish from the water. That idea has largely fallen out of favor. The consensus today is that they were terrestrial predators first and foremost. The claws weren't fishing tools, they were killing tools, and in most ecosystems they inhabited, megaraptorans sat at or very near the top. But they were not always alone. In South America especially, they shared their world with another dynasty of killers, the Carcharodontosaurids, massive, broad-skulled predators that specialized in taking down the largest herbivores available. These animals were sometimes even bigger than megaraptorans, and their reign created a competitive pressure that shaped how megaraptorans evolved. During this period, megaraptorans leaned into what made them different. They didn't try to outmuscle the giants. They outmaneuvered them. Speed, agility, precision. Only after Carcharodontosaurids declined, around 90 million years ago, did megaraptorans begin to grow larger, filling the vacant apex predator roles left behind. Interestingly, despite their rivalry, both groups shared similarities in brain case structure. This has led some researchers to suggest comparable levels of intelligence, not human-like, of course, but possibly on par with modern crocodilians. And crocodiles, as it turns out, are far smarter than we often give them credit for. They coordinate, they set ambushes. Some have even been observed using tools, balancing sticks on their snouts to lure birds. If megaraptorans possessed even a fraction of that cognitive ability, then their prey would have faced not just speed and strength, but strategy. And yet, for all we know about how they lived and hunted, one massive question remains unanswered. What exactly were megaraptorans? That question, what exactly were megaraptorans, has haunted paleontology for decades, because despite their size, their dominance, and their unmistakable presence across the southern continents, these animals refuse to sit neatly in any evolutionary box. They are predators without a clear lineage, monsters without a confirmed ancestry, and the deeper scientists dig, the stranger the picture becomes. When Megaraptor was first discovered, its massive claw misled researchers into thinking they had found a giant dromaeosaur, a supersized raptor. That idea didn't last long. Unlike true raptors, megaraptorans lacked the iconic enlarged sickle claw on the foot. Their killing blades were on the hands, not the feet. That alone set them apart. Next came the idea that they might be related to neovenatoroids. The extreme pneumatization of their bones seemed to support this. Light skeletons, hollowed vertebrae, similar proportions. But as more fossils emerged, cracks formed in that hypothesis as well. Too many anatomical mismatches, too many inconsistencies.
Today, the debate has narrowed, but not resolved. One camp argues that megaraptorans were tyrannosauroids, early cousins of Tyrannosaurus rex. The chisel-shaped teeth, certain skull features, the overall predatory dominance. If this is true, then megaraptorans represent an alternate evolutionary path, one where tyrannosauroids became faster, lighter, and more reliant on their arms instead of their jaws. The other camp places them among non-tyrannosauroid coelurosaurs, a broad and somewhat unsatisfying category that includes everything from ostrich dinosaurs to birds. This explanation avoids committing too strongly, but it also tells us very little. In truth, no one knows, and that uncertainty extends beyond classification. We don't even know where megaraptorans came from. The leading hypothesis suggests an Asian origin, possibly in the very late Jurassic. From there, they may have dispersed southward into Australia during the early Cretaceous. Once established, they thrived, diversified, adapted, and eventually expanded into South America, likely via Antarctica, a continent that was once forested, temperate, and alive with dinosaurs. This makes megaraptorans not just killers, but pioneers. They followed shifting land masses, tracked prey across continents,
survived dramatic climate changes and ecological upheavals that wiped out other groups entirely. And that brings us to perhaps the most astonishing part of their story: their longevity. When you compare Megaraptorans to other major theropod lineages, the difference is staggering. Tyrannosaurids dominated for roughly 16 million years. Spinosaurids lasted about 46 million. Carcharodontosaurids around 64 million. Megalosaurids roughly 25 million. Megaraptorans? Over 84 million years. They endured. While other predators rose and fell, Megaraptorans persisted, adapting, refining, and in many cases growing even more formidable over time. They didn't shrink, they didn't fade, they escalated. The final known members of the group were not weakened relics, they were giants. Maip, the last and largest, stood as the culmination of everything this lineage had been building toward. Bigger claws, greater reach, more power, more fear. It's rare in evolution to see a group peak right at the end, but Megaraptorans did. Which makes their extinction all the more telling, because despite their adaptability, their intelligence, their weapons, and their dominance, nature itself could not stop them. Climate shifts didn't do it. Competition didn't do it. Even the disappearance of rival apex predators only made them stronger. Their end came from above. 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid slammed into Earth. The impact triggered wildfires, tsunamis, and a global winter that collapsed ecosystems worldwide. Photosynthesis failed, food chains disintegrated, and every non-avian dinosaur, Megaraptorans included, vanished. In an instant, one of the most successful predator dynasties in Earth's history was erased. Today, no animal walks the planet with claws even remotely comparable to theirs. Bears have strength, big cats have speed, crocodiles have bite force, but none combine reach, flexibility, speed, and blade-like precision the way Megaraptorans did. And that is perhaps the most unsettling realization of all. The Indoraptor was never truly fiction. It was a memory, an echo, a cinematic reflection of something evolution had already perfected millions of years before humans ever existed. So, if you're ever asked what the absolute worst dinosaur to get caught by would be, remember this: not the biggest jaw, not the strongest bite, but the predator that could reach out and carve you apart while you were still alive.